Hey guys, it's Kelsey and back with another scrapbooking process video, and today is Stretch to Sketch. So this is the 12 by 12 sketch we have today, and I was a little concerned with this one because I do not have a hexagon punch. So I had to get a little bit creative on how I was going to do this one. I decided to squish it down into an 8.5 by 11. But I'm doing something I've never done before where I'm doing a landscape 8.5 by 11. So people who scrapbook in this format, I'd be interested to know if you do landscape layouts because I imagine it would be sideways in your book. It's not really an issue for me because I'm a 12 by 12 scrapper, so regardless, it's going on a 12 by 12 and it will be upright in my book. But I thought this would be a fun twist and something I've never done before. So I'm starting with just a piece of computer paper. I'm out of my white cardstock, so I decided just to use a piece of computer paper because it's already 8.5 by 11. And it's going to be matted on a 12 by 12 anyways, so I wasn't too worried about it. I decided just to start with a couple scraps, so I have this pink scrap running across the top as that main layer in the sketch, and then instead of stitching across the top, I decided just to use a branding strip for that horizontal detail. And then I really wanted to use a couple pocket cards, and since I'm using this floral on blue, I really wanted to use the floral on blue pocket card. So I'm trimming that into two pieces and making it look like a longer horizontal piece. And then in the sketch where it has the kind of title and journaling, I'm just going to use this blue pocket card because I'll do my title on that. So it will have the same text effect. And then I just decided I wanted a mat around my photo, so I'm just doing the solid pink. And I really like that because it's really subtle. It goes over the pink grid and just kind of disappears. But I like how when it goes over the white and these other blue layers, it really pops. So I'm trying to keep this kind of a pastel look. I'm really trying to keep this one light and airy, especially because my workaround for the hexagons in the sketch is to use a hexagon stencil to do stitching, which I also have never done. And it actually worked out really well, and it's a technique I'm going to try to remember because I don't use my stencils a lot for mixed media. I don't do mixed media a whole lot. I kind of just go through phases with that. So having this new technique where I can use the stencils in a different way was really exciting, and I think it works really well for these more geometric ones or things that have an angular shape. So you'll kind of get to see how that comes together. But for right now, I really like how my layers are looking. I think it's following the sketch in its own way. At this point, it doesn't look too much like this sketch, but I think the hexagons are the main part that will really help it mimic that look. So here you can see I have all of these layers down. I want to go ahead and mat it onto the 12 by 12. I know the point of this layout is to be an 8.5 by 11. So that's the main portion I'm going to be focusing on and squishing this sketch down into. But just because in my book it is going to go on a 12 by 12, I don't want it to look disconnected or that it is just an 8.5 by 11 glued to a 12 by 12. So what I like to do when I do layouts like this is just have a couple elements overhang the 8.5 by 11 so it connects it to the rest of the page. But obviously if you're scrap lifting or you're using the sketch to be an 8.5 by 11, you just won't have those overhanging elements. But here you can kind of see where I'm planning on it laying. I end up scooting it more towards the top because I'm thinking when I do the hexagon sketch, I really want to follow that lower hexagon cluster down towards the lower part of the page. And so I know there's going to be overhang on the bottom. So I end up gluing the 8.5 by 11 towards the top. So there's kind of a 1/2 inch border of this blue plaid around the top three sides. And of course I'm going to gut this blue plaid because there's a huge chunk that's covered, so I'll have that for my next layout. And then I'm going to go ahead and glue this all together. So I'll do the whole thing where I back it in some black before I glue all my layers down. But this layout came together pretty quickly. The most time I took was the actual stitching portion, which I'll skip through most of it just because I think it would be really boring for you guys to watch me do all the stitching, but you'll definitely see how I go about doing that. So that was a fun thing to try out. I realized once I went to lay this computer paper down that because it is just a thin piece of computer paper, it was kind of translucent. So I did glue a second piece of computer paper to it just to make it a little bit more opaque before I glued it down. But here you can just see, I like how that branding strip overhangs and kind of connects the 12 by 12 to the 8.5 by 11. And then I think this is where I'm going to go ahead and start my stitching. So I have this hexagon stencil I'm just going to lay over my layout, and I'm just going to start piercing all of the corners of the hexagon, of all the hexagons I want to use. So I'm really trying to follow the sketch and kind of how the hexagons were laid out. But I love this. I think it was a really cool way to use the hexagons. And I love stitching, especially with Felicity Jane anyways. So this was a really kind of different way for me to use it. So that was a lot of fun. But you're gonna see I'm going through and I'm just piercing all the corners. So I'm doing a cluster up here in the upper right hand corner, and then I'll have a cluster in the lower left hand corner. And I'm really trying to be literal with how I'm following this this outline. So it can be as close to the sketch as possible. But here you will see I kind of pierce over the 8.5 by 11 onto the 12 by 12, and that also really helps everything kind of connect. So hopefully that's not cheating with the stretch the sketch, because the 8.5 by 11 is kind of all you're supposed to be seeing. But I think it is helpful for people who are 12 by 12 scrappers like me to be able to do 8.5 by 11s and see how it could work with your style. So this is a good way to kind of connect those. If you were going to stretch the sketch in the opposite direction, if you had an 8.5 by 11 sketch and you're a 12 by 12 scrapper, this is something you could do. So all my holes are poked, and I'm going in with my white thread. You'll see me kind of start to stitch, and then I'll skip to the end, so you don't have to watch the whole process. But I'm just doing kind of big stitches from corner to corner of the hexagon. So it didn't take as long as I thought it would, since it wasn't a bunch of little stitches. But I think it's really fun, and I like that it overlaps the photo, it overlaps all these different paper layers, but just because it's like a white thread, it doesn't like distract or cover up from anything. So I think we'll skip ahead here in a minute to where we're done. And voila, this is the final result. I think it looks really cool. And I'm kind of going to use those hexagons as the base for my embellishment cluster. Again, I'm really trying to keep this light and airy, and I'm also getting down on my die cuts. So I don't want to pile a ton of stuff on there, but I do want to continue the floral theme. And I've also been dying to use these butterflies. So since I have kind of a 2 cluster design going, I decided just to do one floral bundle and one butterfly and one star in each cluster. And I really think that creates balance, but I love how all the pieces are similar but different. So it's not identical. They're different florals, they're different butterflies, and then the color of the stars are even different. So I really like that. I am going to pop the butterflies up on some foam. Everything else will be glued flat. But I really wanted the page I used the butterflies are for this to kind of be the star. So I love the hexagon technique, and I love how it kind of showcases these butterflies, but nothing is really competing with each other, which I like. So I'm just trying to figure out spatially how I want all of these to sit, but I love how they're framing the photo. This photo was, again, when Billy was 3 months old, and we were at UGA, and we were waiting for the previous physics class to get out so we could go into the physics classroom. And so we were I was really tired this day, and I literally was laying down on the floor in the lobby, and Billy just came up and kind of snuggled next to me, and he was being such a patient boy, just sitting there and waiting. So I took this picture and I wanted to document it. So I'm kind of just thinking my title is going to be something on the line of waiting for class. I don't know what I'm going to do alphabet wise, because the pinks I have aren't really the same pinks, and the blues I have don't really go. But I did go through my tile letter stash, because I remember I had these teal alphabets, and I think these go really well because there's a couple pops of teals in the florals and the butterfly. And I actually haven't used this set yet, so I was really excited to use it. So I'm pretty much going to do another 2 font title, and I'm going to have waiting for in this tile blue, and I'm actually going to pop all of these up on some foam so there's some fun dimension. They're going to be going over part of the stitching, and so I was worried how it would stick being these small little tile alphas. So using the foam dots, I think it adds some interest because it gives you that dimension, but it really helps these tiles stick going over the thread and stuff. So that's going to be the first portion of my title, and then the only alpha I could really find for the next portion was this white alphabet. I'm pretty sure my mom had given me this set, so I'm running out on this one, and then I have a new pack that she just gave me. So I'm just gonna spell out physics, that way the title reads waiting for physics. I'm not gonna do any like journaling because I think that's pretty self-explanatory. But I thought it was a nice, sweet, kind of fun and simple page. But for as simple as it was, I was really excited to try this kind of new technique. I don't know that I've ever popped up tile alphas on foam either, so that was kind of a fun thing to try, and I think it makes it really interesting. Sometimes these small tile alphas can look really like plain and boring, and the little bit of foam on the back it made it really cool, so I really liked that. But pretty much my title is done. I think I decide I want one more cluster. I'm really trying to use these chipboard circles on every layout, and I know I've already failed this month, but there is this teal one that says happy, and because this is going on a 12 by 12, I just wanted one more thing on the 12 by 12 portion to help tie the whole layout together. So I just stuck that happy down there, so the teal was down here, and now I'm just gonna do like a straight stitch in a couple rows just so the stitching is down there too, and I think that kind of helps tie in the 8.5 by 11 to the rest of the page. But obviously that portion is not part of the stretch the sketch. But I'm gonna get this stitched really quick, and then that's pretty much it. So close-ups will be here in a minute, but make sure you check out everyone else who's doing stretch the sketch. I'm really interested to see how everyone else does with the hexagons and what they use for it. But this was my interpretation. So here are the close-ups. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.